Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our in-depth video review of the Nokia Lumia 1020. It's finally here in the flesh. It's kind of been a long time in making. It's going to come to AT&T very shortly, sporting a 2-year contract price of $300, so a little bit up there, but there's a reason for that. It has the window experience combined with a PureView camera. It's actually a 41 megapixel camera, and there are a lot of cool tech that's going into it to make it one of the class leaders in the space. We're going to find out whether or not the big talk about 41 megapixels is worth it or not, so let's find out. Following in the same footsteps as some of its notable predecessors, the Lumia 1020 has that distinguishable Lumia design that we're all familiar with. And you can tell it's the same plastic polycarbonate body, rounded corners, which gives it a very stylish look. But this time around, though, instead of being a rather streamlined device, it's a little bit thicker just because of that 41 megapixel camera in the rear, which is pretty much warranted when you think about it. But when you hold in the hand, it kind of comes off a little bit awkward feeling just because the hump kind of gets in the way, especially for typing up messages with this keyboard. It's not uniformly flat like the other Lumias we've checked out. You have the bottom and top edges, which are rounded, so you could stand it upright if you wanted to. It's still rather large, so if you have smaller hands, you might be a little bit unwieldy. And it's also noticeably top heavy just because that's where all the camera hardware is placed. And the nice thing about the Lumia 1020 is that it's also available in 3 distinct colors. You have black, white, and yellow, so at least there's some variety with that. Although it would have been nice to see a totally new display for the Lumia 1020, it's basically the same thing as other recent Lumia devices we've checked out, specifically the Lumia 925 for T-Mobile and the Lumia 928 for Verizon. It's a 4.5-inch PureMotion HD Plus display with clear black AMOLED technology, so its resolution stands at 768 by 1280 pixels, which is a little bit better than 720p, but not as astounding compared to the 1080p displays out there. Sure, it's not as high resolution, but it's still effective enough for most things. Good details, good clarity, so we really can't complain. It's mainly limited by the platform. Windows Phone doesn't yet support those 1080p displays. And being an AMOLED display, it has all the qualities we like about it. For example, you have those rich and overly saturated colors, which gives it a really nice wow factor and that glow. And when you top off its nice wide view angles, it's pretty pleasant overall, though when it comes to outdoor usage, we're still finding ourselves having to shield it away from the sun. And it's also worth noting, just like before, it is super sensitive, so even if you're wearing gloves, you'll be able to interact it with no problems whatsoever. In typical fashion, the Lumia 1020 sports the usual set of Windows capacitive buttons below its display. You have the start button, back, and also search function. While above, you have the earpiece, you have the light and proximity sensors, and you also have the front-facing 1.2 megapixel camera, which has the ability to shoot video in 720p. If we take a look around the handset's trim, we'll find all the same ports and buttons we're familiar with. We have the volume control, dedicated power button, and the shutter key all on the right edge of the phone, and they're all raised and have good feedback. On the top edge, we have the 3.5mm headset jack, the noise cancellation microphone, and this area is where the micro SIM slot is stored. And on the bottom edge, we have the micro USB port for charging data connectivity. These dots here consist of its internal speaker and microphone. And towards on this one side here, you have a useful area where you could attach a lanyard. So it pretty much makes it similar to like any camera out there. Without question, the star of the show here is the 41 megapixel PureView camera it's packing in the rear. It's just a massive tally when you think about its competitors out there, but there's a lot going into this. First and foremost, the sensor used in this is actually smaller than the one that was featured on the 808 PureView. This one here measures in at 1/1/2 inches in size. Yes, it is smaller, but the nice thing about it, it's not as big or large looking compared to the 808 PureView. It just made that handset look quite beefy compared to this. At the same time, it features a lot of other cool hardware. For example, you have an f2.2 aperture lens, Zeiss optics, optical image stabilization, you have backside illumination, you have also a xenon flash combined with an LED flash, and when it comes to video taking capabilities, you can do 1080p videos, both at 30 frames per second, or for that more cinematic look, you get 24 frames per second as well. And again, you also have that lossless zoom, which is one hallmark feature of this camera. So we bet you're kind of curious about how it's going to handle, so we're going to show you more a little bit later. It's worth mentioning that the Nokia Lumia 1020 doesn't feature wireless charging. You'd have to get a separate accessory for that. At the same time, it'd been nice to see some sort of support for storage expandability via micro SD card slot, just because with that camera, it'd been a lot easier being able to share photos and videos with your computer. And with its unibody construction, there's no access to its battery, of course. We're not going to go in great detail talking about the experience here, just because it's very similar to pretty much any other Windows Phone 8 device out there that have been released recently. But it also benefits from others, from its competitors, just because it has all the Nokia-centric applications. For example, you'll find Nokia City Lens, Drive Plus Maps, and Nokia Music, so it has a little bit more offering than its rivals. And as far as personalization, you still have the fancy-looking start screen with the dynamic live tiles. You could rearrange them and also resize them if you want. And of course, if you swipe over, you have your app panels. There's still some improvements needed, for example, a better notification system, but it still has a really nice presentation, and the functionality is pretty decent too. Like I mentioned earlier, the placement of the camera in the rear makes it a little bit tough actually typing up messages, just because our fingers get in the way of it holding it in the back. But as far as the overall experience, it's still acceptable once you get the hang of it. It's super responsive, nice spacious layout, and has just one killer autocorrect feature. With Windows Phone, you really don't need the most cutting-edge hardware to have a good performance out of the handset. And that's what we find here with the Nokia Lumia 1020. It actually shares the same processor as its predecessors. It has a dual-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 Plus processor with 2 GB of RAM, which is actually double the amount versus the other devices. So what you get is a pretty responsive performance out of it. Whether it be basic tasks or more complex ones, it's able to handle them with ease. Armed with 4G LTE connectivity, you get fast page loads with this here. On top of that, the performance is fantastic too, just because everything is smooth, whether it be page rendering, kinetic scrolling, and navigational controls. It just moves very swiftly, so you get a phenomenal experience. When it comes to listening to music, you have two options available to you. You could go either with Nokia Music, which offers streaming services and also content purchasing, or you could go with the usual Windows Phone one. As far as the audio quality from its speaker, we gotta say it's strong, it's powerful, it's loud, and doesn't crackle at all. Out of the box, it supports a wide array of codecs. You have MPEG-4, H.264, XVID, and even DivX all supported. The one we have here is in 1080p resolution. You could tell moving very quickly, no slowdown whatsoever. So it's a great experience. And when you combine its vibrant looking display, wide viewing angles, it goes particularly well for this device. So now comes the most exciting part about the handset, the 41 megapixel PureView camera it's packing in the rear. It's a lot of hardware and technology going to it, but we can't forget that the 808 PureView was the first to really establish that mark, but this is the first time it's paired with a Windows Phone device, so it was a long time in making, and you could see that there's that hump in the rear. So when you place it on a flat surface, it puts the handset at an angle, and you might be curious about whether or not it's going to come into contact with the lens in the back. But interestingly enough, it only opens up as soon as you start up the camera application. Before we talk about its quality, we'll quickly glance over the software interface for taking photos. So what you have here on the Lumia 1020, you have two options. You could go use the standard Windows Phone camera application, which is pretty generic. You have some basic functions on board, but it's only accessible by going to the apps panel. The other one here is the one that you're going to probably be using a lot more. It's Nokia's own homebrewed Nokia Pro Cam app. So basically, you can access it through the apps panel there, or better yet, you can just hold down the shutter key and automatically will launch it for you. Now the beauty in this new camera interface that adheres to the needs of hardcore photographers out there. There's just a host of manual controls and features that it has to offer. So you can see with the camera interface, it's pretty much clutter-free. You have some buttons on the right-hand side, some options on top, and a preview gallery in the top left. Switch to video mode right here if you want to, and more settings on the top right corner. The top bar here is pretty interesting because you have access to specific areas of the camera. For example, by tapping this, we could adjust the exposure. We could put the shutter speed to where we want it. We could change the ISO, adjust the focus itself, the white balance too, and even turn off, turn on the flash. When you take a snapshot with the handset, it actually saves two sets of images. If you go into the settings here, you'll see what they are. It's both a 5 megapixel one and a 38 megapixel high resolution snapshot. So what happens is when you do take the photo, there's going to be some delay in between just because it's saving the image, especially the higher resolution one. So you see, you took the snapshot, it's saving, and now it's finished, and from here I could shoot another photo. So there's a little bit of delay, but it's not too bad considering the size of the shot itself. Although it lacks optical zoom, just like what we find in the Samsung Galaxy S4 zoom, the Lumia 1020 has an alternative which is pretty useful too. It's lossless zoom, which is aided by its oversampling technology. So basically, in order to do that, you just slide your finger up and you could get a really close shot. And from here, you could just focus in and take the snapshot. So here is the image that we snapped, and you have that 5 megapixel oversampling image. And we'll take a look at that real quick here. It doesn't compromise whatsoever with the details and color reproduction. It actually still has that great clarity and sharpness that we'd like. So here's that full shot, and it's also ideal for those 4:6 printouts. However, though, at the same time, it actually saves that 38 megapixel snapshot. So what we can do is hit that reframes button on the right hand side, and from here we could actually see more of the shot we've taken. And there's no compromise, like I said, with the detail and the color reproduction with the entire image. It's maintained, so we could have a different printout if we want of just the Rubik's Cube, or if we want to just the stand itself. But like I said, it works rather well despite the fact it isn't necessarily optical zoom. And finally, the last piece to the equation, to the handset's amazing arsenal, is the Nokia SmartCam application. Now, this is the area where you're going to get all the cool features and modes with the camera experience. So I'll quickly show you the tutorial what we're talking about here. So essentially what it does, it takes a series of snapshots, so burst mode essentially, and from here you could get either the best shot like that, or you could do action shots, so it shows them all consecutively and stitches them all together. You could emphasize motion, so you have that cool looking effect. You have also best faces. I believe this is the one, perfect shot. So you could change the you could just mix and match for all the perfect faces. And finally, you could also remove certain things in the background. So a lot of cool features, and it works pretty well. And finally, we come to picture quality out of its 41 megapixel camera. Now, the 5 megapixel snapshots are great for sharing for Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that, but it's those high resolution ones where you get just an astounding amount of detail with it. It's pretty much unparalleled compared to other smartphones out there. The level of detail is crisp, a lot of sharpness to it, and just extremely vivid. It does a great job of actually maintaining a good natural color reproduction, handles dynamic range pretty well, and exposure is just spot on perfect too. So we could show you, if you look at some of the samples we've taken, it's just breathtaking. Wonderful when it comes to macro shots too. Just an insane amount of detail you're going to get with this type of camera, and it's just balanced too. Low lighting is also superior placed too with its optical image stabilization. You don't get as much blurriness, and on top of that, it just is able to light up the scenery a lot more, so it draws out a lot of those details you would some otherwise would miss out on other cameras out there. So it excels in low lighting, and if you needed to, the LED, the xenon flash of the camera is just also spectacular. It casts a good amount of power. Even at long ranges, 7 feet and above, it's able to maintain a nice neutral look. So this camera isn't messing around. If you really love taking photos and you want nothing but exceptional quality, the Nokia Lumia 1020 is going to be your go-to device. Equally stunning is the Lumia 1020's 1080p high definition video recording quality. Now there are different modes. You could shoot 1080p, 720p, you have 30 frames per second, 25, and even 24 frames per second for that cinematic look. The one here I'm showing here is in 30 frames per second, and there's just a lot to like about it. It has a lot of crisp and sharp looking details, a good balanced color reproduction, doesn't seem too oversaturated, and on top of that, the exposure is gradual, and audio recording is pretty clear with no distortion whatsoever, so it's really considered a class contender. Now this video I'm showing you here is actually shot in 1080p but at 24 frames per second, and it gives you that cinematic look. And this time around too, I set the focus to its closest, so basically it's fixed. Normally it's continuous autofocus, so if you have something come up to the middle, it's going to adjust it, but this is just with the focus by itself set to manual, so you could kind of see where it maintains most of its focus towards the middle there at a specific range, and you get some really nice looking visuals. And with 24 frames per second, it really has that dreamy look like you're watching a movie. This sample here is shot under lower lighting conditions. That's another area where the Lumia 1020 really excels in, thanks to its backside illuminated sensor and its optical image stabilization. So it doesn't look jerky when you're panning, it just maintains a nice smooth appearance. And with lower lighting conditions, you could see, we noticed that it still maintains a good amount of detail, doesn't look as noisy compared to some of the other flagship devices in the space. And on top of that, it just seems to look brighter and just draw out more of the details that you would otherwise miss out, and also handles dynamic range fairly well. Doesn't seem to overexpose or underexpose certain areas. The handset handles phone calls relatively well. We didn't have any issues comprehending our callers with it. Now, there are only two issues that we found. First one is just with the speakerphone. Volume output's not the strongest, and with the earpiece, you got to really jam it close to your ear just to hear exactly what's being said. But once there, voices have a really commanding presence, not that much distortion, for the most part noise-free. And the other good thing about it is its noise cancellation feature kicks in fairly quickly. When we first used the Lumia 1020, we noticed that the glance feature of Windows Phone was set to peak. So basically when the handset times out, it's going to display the clock consistently there while it's off. So who knows what kind of battery it's using up, but it did impact the overall battery life of the handset. In fact, we managed to only get 10 hours of normal usage with 4G LTE connectivity, which is pretty disappointing. But as soon as we turned it off and we had that set, we managed to get better battery life. In fact, it was extended up to 18 hours of normal usage, which is okay. Not really class leading. We would like to see a little bit more, but it's a lot better than the previous 10-hour mark. Some people would argue that this has been a long time in the making, especially when you throw in the fact that the Nokia 808 PureView was launched well over a year ago overseas, and we all thought that the Nokia Lumia 920 announcement was going to unveil a Windows Phone combined with a PureView camera, but as we know it didn't come to fruition. We had to wait until now to finally get it here with the Lumia 1020. So with this handset, it's going to be launching very shortly with AT&T, sporting a 2-year contract price of $300, which is rather pricey when you think about smartphones in general, but actually it's packing 32 gigabytes of storage, so it's pretty much priced similarly to the iPhone 5 32 gigabyte version, so you have the same amount of storage, so it kind of makes sense in that aspect. But some people will probably still think about that $300 cost. It might be scared away, but what you get in this handset is definitely the camera experience. It's just a class contender in this space. It's unparalleled with its quality, both still shots and videos. It really excels in that aspect. There's a lot of cool shooting modes, and if you really are hardcore about taking photos, you want the absolute best quality, this is a device that you're going to want to seek out. But then again, if you're not really too big on the camera, it's essentially like a Nokia Lumia 920 at heart. It's pretty much spec like it, down from the processor, even some of the design elements, the display. So aside from the camera, it's essentially a Lumia 920. And if you're just into the platform experience and not really a whole lot into the photos, you might want to think about that. Or also think about some of the other flagship devices out there, which has a little bit more well-rounded approach, like the iPhone 5s, the HTC Ones, and the Galaxy S4s. So if you'd like to learn more about the Nokia Lumia 1020, guys, you could check out our website, PhoneArena.com. It's John V. Thanks for watching.